this evening, so we're going to be looking at the three objectives as were outlined a while ago. So the first objective is trying to define what is pastoral care. Then we're going to be looking at what that involves. And finally, we're going to be looking at some tips to provide better pastoral care. But before we do that, some quick facts. Do you know that the likelihood of depression, stress, and anxiety is significantly higher in teachers than other professionals? Do you also know that many teachers want to resign usually after the first 3 months? And are you aware that unsustainable workloads, lack of support from staff members, pressures of surveillance, and low pay contribute to high teacher stress? And I guess this is why this presentation is so important. It's going to help you navigate through all of those possibilities. So what is pastoral care? It's an approach to educational development that is effective, it's holistic, it's strategized, and it's inclusive. And these words are extremely important. They're not just put together for the sake of putting together, but they're very important in the way pastoral care ought to be done. So it's not just hobnob, whatever you feel like, or one aspect of it. It's really very systematic. It is also very foundational to a progressive learning environment. So we can stop right there and say, if you do not have a pastoral care system in place, most likely you are not working in a progressive learning environment. It's, as I said a while ago, a systematic approach to learning. We come to a greater definition of what it is. But before I even mention that, let me say that in the past, pastoral care has been relegated to an add-on. You focus on the academic subjects, and then you might think of the counselor, or then you might, consider someone else in the process. But what we're saying here is that this is major, foundational, totally important in order for all of the other players to be involved. And so the definition that I've come to love is this one that says pastoral care is not merely a complementary practice. It is policy and practices fully integrated throughout the teaching and learning and the structural organization of a school to effectively meet the needs, the personal, social, or well-being and academic needs of students and staff. And I want you to focus on those two players, but I want to also say that there are also other players in this. So we might have what we call the auxiliary staff. All of those persons are in pastoral care. What does pastoral care involve? It involves contextualization. And what do I mean by that? I mean simply that you need to be faithful to the care and sensitive to the context, the social context, while you're reflecting the curriculum. So you're not just teaching, you have to teach in context to where the students are. And I must say at this point, I am not a teacher, so I don't have all the theories that you would know, you would have easily at your fingertips when it comes to teaching and learning. I come from a psychology background, but it speaks to the effectiveness of that curriculum if it's grounded in the social context of where the persons you're trying to cater for are. And it also involves several layers of meaning that can be embedded in that context. So the political, the economic, the religious realities of those you are serving needs to be borne in mind when you are coming up with a pastoral system of care. Okay, you wanna ensure that it's grounded in where the people find themselves, where they feel, where they sense the importance of things and so on. All right. Another aspect of pastoral care speaks to, and this is a really big part of it, the communal emphasis. Now, prior to this emphasis, pastoral care was relegated to the counselor only, generally in schools. You talk about pastoral care, you're talking about the counselor, or where counselors don't exist, you know, like the nice teacher, the one who's the mommy figure, the one who would listen to the child and so on. But we want to move from that, from an individual professional to a model of care for the community and its members, by the community and its members. So everyone has to be involved, otherwise it doesn't work. Simple as that. No matter who the person might be, once they are affecting your school community, they need to be involved. So parents need to be a part of your pastoral care system. Community leaders, community members need to be involved in your pastoral care system. And so this will strengthen what you do in the academic, on the academic side of things. It must also allow for expression at the behavioral, emotional, and cognitive levels. And this is important because I think we can safely say that we normally have this big dichotomy between rural schools and urban schools. And we want to think that one is better than the other, but I am not of that opinion. What needs to happen in more cases is that school, wherever it is embedded, needs to be able to have that expression for the teacher, for the students, for the community, where they can find their, they can have that sort of camaraderie, they can have that sort of care in a way that is comfortable for them, in a way that is healthy for them, in a way that is convenient for them, in order for them to be at their best. It also involves appropriate language. And you might think that this is strange, but hear me out. Prior to understanding that pastoral care ought to be a system, not a person, providing a particular type of care, it was just relegated to a duty of care. So once you're a teacher, you're expected to care. But what the research is showing is that it has to go beyond that, not simply by virtue of the fact that you're a teacher, that you're expected to care, but in performing your duties, in administering whatever you're doing, you have a duty to care. So it's no longer a choice, it's an imperative. You have to care, and so your language has to change from the sort of what we would usually say, I'm not bothering with that child, I don't care about that child. If he don't want to learn, it's his business. That's no longer part of your vocabulary. You now have to find a way where you understand that this is what you're being paid to do. And so you give that sort of care in a way that is helpful to the persons who you are serving. And it goes not just for the students, but also for your colleagues. Some persons may just come into, let's say, a staff room and just sit down and they're in their own world. No, you have to integrate yourself. You have to, share and listen to and get feedback and give encouragement and all of that. That's your duty to care, right, in action there. Okay, and then this one, love as connectedness and relation with teachers, sense of well-being, who interconnects in a complex education system. We have to understand that love is not just a fuzzy feeling or how they sometimes, they movies or, the media would have teachers as these persons who you just hug and give a nice smile, or you bring an apple to. It goes beyond that. We have to connect with our students in a way that is going to be impactful and it's going to be meaningful to that child. Okay, now I'm going to show you a video now. It is out of a social emotional learning program called Conscious Discipline. Now, when I usually teach about this conscious discipline, it's in a different context. But just as we're talking about love as connectedness here, I want to use that video to help you see how it works, how it is in action. Okay? So let's go with this video.
My name is DJ Baptiste, and I was born in Lacombe, Louisiana. I was raised by my grandmother. I was born to a 14-year-old mom and a 16-year-old dad, so they were young. They really weren't able to make too many decisions. I was very defiant, though. I loved to get in trouble because getting in trouble got your attention. I was the type of student where I loved attention, and I did whatever it took to get attention. I was the leader of a gang, and let me tell you why, because in a gang, we got a sense of security and a sense of belonging. We feel like these my homies, they gonna take care of me, they got me, no matter what. So that give us that sense of belonging. Fight. That was our only option. We had a disagreement, we fought. Whether we playing basketball, playing hide and go seek, it didn't matter. If it's a disagreement, we fight. So I was raised like that, and that was instilled in my head. It wasn't no other option. You fight. You have to be violent. And I'm gonna tell you, we like to fight in school because we know we had a crowd, so we continue to get kicked out of school. We jump people. I mean, just so much violence. I never was a second thought. When it came to my head, that's what I did. If I wanted to fight, boom, I'm fighting. If you're close enough where I can put my hands on you, I'm hitting you in your mouth. That's just how I was. I did go to juvenile twice. Me and my homeboys was riding one time. We got pulled over by the police. The police found some pistols in the trunk, pistols up under the seat. And we wasn't even headed to out of all the times we done had guns on us, headed to go do something, the police never stopped us. But this time we were just riding around with the guns and he stopped us. And they confiscated all the guns and took us down, took the guns, and yeah, pretty bad. It was my first day of my senior year of school, and everybody always tell me, since you hate school so much and you're ready to get out of school, then why don't you just go ahead and put forth a little effort and finish your senior year? And I didn't look at it like that. I looked at a school as a place of, this where I can associate, this when I can make people laugh, I can be a leader still because people want to see me, people want to follow me. I can look at girls, and if anything's going on between the hours of 8 and 3, it's gonna happen in school. So I didn't want to miss it. So that was my little motivation for school, to go to school, because I didn't want to miss anything. And I walked in Miss P class, that's what I call it, Miss P class late.
My name is Donna Porter, and I teach public speaking at Picayune Memorial High School in Picayune, Mississippi.
I sat back and thought about it. When you late to something, everybody looks at you.
And all of a sudden the door flings open and this huge student that I've never seen in my life walks in and says,
"What's up?" And she looked, and I said, "What's up?" And I just had the attention of the class that fast.
My first thought is, why did this happen to me? On the first day of school when I'm trying to set the tone? And then I thought, I've got this. Thank goodness I've got this. But to be able to access my brilliance, I have to take a deep breath, stay composed, and watch him, look at his nonverbal language, because all behavior is purposeful.
She said, "Well, I noticed you're late to my room. There's no problem because you probably couldn't find it." I just kind of looked at her with this crazy look like, yeah, whatever. And then she was like, "Well, have a seat." And I looked at her, I said, "Do you have any kids?"
And I said, "Well, actually, your name is DJ, Mr. Baptiste. I have 2, and I just informed the class about it, but because you missed my room, you didn't hear. So are you married?" he said. And I said, "Actually, I just told the class I've been married for 30 years.
I stepped back and said, 30 years? Folded my arms, looked up and down and said, "Don't you think it's time for a change?" Now, at that point in time right there, I expected her to get red in the face, lose her composure, run to her desk, get a referral, write me up and send me out. I was ready for that. That's what I expected. And now that I've learned, the brain seeks patterns. So that was the pattern that my brain was seeking. You be disrespectful, you get sent out of class, but you get the attention that you want. She didn't do that. She looked at me, she smiled and said,
"Do you go to the doctor when you're well?" And he looked at me very funny. He said, "No, you go when you're sick." I said, "Do you come to school when you know everything?" He said, "I guess not. I guess you come supposedly to learn." I said, "Well, you've got a lot to learn and I can't wait to teach you." And then I left him with that feeling of angst. And then I said, "You know what I noticed more importantly about you? You have charisma."
Charisma? She was like, "Do you know what that means?" I said, "I'm cute." And everybody in the class laughed. And she was like, something like that. She was like, "But you just know how to work a room, And I said, I was just listening to her. She was like, she threw me off because she started talking good about me after I wanted her to get into a power struggle with me. That's what I wanted.
And I said, "So I've been thinking in the last few seconds, I give jobs to my students in high school. Do you know anything about jobs in school?" He said, "Oh yeah, in kindergarten, I was the line leader." I said, "We don't have a line leader in high school, but we have appropriate jobs. And I usually take a week or so to figure out what job would best fit what student. I do a multiple intelligence survey, and we tell a little bit about ourselves. But you know what, DJ? I don't need to do all that with you, because you're innately designed to be a greeter." He's like, "A greeter? What's that?" And I said, "A greeter is someone that will stand at my door every morning."
As everybody come in, I get to shake everybody's hand, appropriately hug the girls. That threw my mind off. And then she said, on top of that, I get to come in front of her class and have my own session for 2 to 3 minutes. How does that sound? That's what she said. I said, "It sounds too good to be true, so let me run it back to you." I said, "So you mean to tell me I get to stand outside your classroom, shake everybody's hand who comes by, then on top of that, I get to come in front of the class to have my own session?" She was like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I want, I want to try this." She was like, "But it's one catch." And I remember I dropped my head like I knew it was something,
All you have to do is be on time.
Because if you're my greeter, that means you have to be the first one here so everybody get a chance to see you and shake your hand before they walk in my classroom. And I just remember shaking my head like, all right, I try this. I see what it's something here I can't tell yet, but it was something there, and I just remember thinking, I try this. And she said, "Okay, pick up your backpack that you threw down and go have a seat." And that was the first day of my new life.
Day 2, I'm standing in the hall and I see this mass of people just parting, and the only figurative language I can think of is Moses parting the Red Sea. And here comes this huge guy, and I hear these words that are so important for anybody watching this video. Everybody move out of my way. I've got to get to Miss Porter's class on time because listen, I have a job to do. I have a job to do. A disconnected child is a discouraged child. He needed to be encouraged, and every day he stood from day 2. He had been in the criminal justice center, he had been expelled from the alternative school, he had been in school isolation, out of school suspension. Nothing worked. All he needed was to be encouraged. And he became my greeter. We usually have jobs just every 9 weeks, but by unanimous vote of the class, he became the year-long greeter because they felt nobody could do the job as well as DJ.
I feel like the experiences that I went through in my life was meant to happen so I can come back and help kids, help teachers understand. I feel like I have a gift that I need to share, a testimony that I would like to share, and I know I can help kids along with teachers. Oftentimes teachers get into it with students, they have problems with students because they don't have the skills. And I feel like anytime I can help a teacher get the skills, she has a chance to save a life. And I often tell teachers, I want you to have the same success story that Ms. Porter had. I want you to have that student that you walk down the aisle with to that graduation. I want you to have that student that say he owes his life to you. And the only reason she has that is because she had the skills of conscious discipline. So anything that's dealing with conscious discipline, I'm all for.
Sorry, one moment.
Ms. Morris?
There you go. You seeing my screen now?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry about that. Not sure what happened
That's
there.
okay.
Were you able to hear the video?
Yes, please.
Okay, wonderful. Oh dear. Where's mine? Sorry about that. Right, so I hope that you could appreciate just from that video how love, in terms of the connectedness of the teacher to the student and vice versa, the student back to the teacher, was able to help him navigate and self-regulate when he was obviously a very truant and very delinquent student. So that is just one aspect there of pastoral care, love in action. All right. Now, from that, we want to look at the different phases and the nature of the different phases of caring, which is such an important aspect of our work. So the first phase we want to talk about is caring about. And what this means is that you must recognize that care is necessary, noticing the existence of a need, assessing that this need should be met, and understand the roots and consequences of those needs. Ideally, of course, in consultation with the potential recipient. And if we're looking at that video, if just want to use that video as an example there. We saw that DJ had a need, right? He had the need for attention. But the teacher, in caring about him, did not belittle him or embarrass him or humiliate him. She recognized that he had a need for care. And so she did that by paying attention to him. So the ethical element involved in caring about a student is showing attentiveness. Caring for. This is when you're recognizing that one has the responsibility and assumes it. And the ethical element in this is responsibility. That's what you are. That's why I hope that you chose to become a teacher, because you want to care for the students who are entrusted to you, and you also want to care for your colleagues as you both work together to ensure, harmonious development of the system that you're in. The next phase of caring is caregiving. And this is where the actual hands-on work of care happens. The ethical elements involved here are competence. And you heard DJ talk about the fact that sometimes teachers don't manage well, not because they sometimes don't have the heart or the good intention, but because sometimes they lack the skills that are required to help them navigate a disruptive child. And so in caregiving, the element here involved is competence, where there's a combination of skill, knowledge, and beliefs that are appropriately used for the task of caring. Okay, and of course, capacity to do that, to be able to fulfill the demands of care. And the final one is care receiving. Now, it would really be remiss of us as teachers if we are so focused on caring and feeling that we're loving on our students and giving them all the support that we could, but they didn't receive it. So in care receiving, in the nature of this phase, the one who is cared for responds to and acknowledges the work of care that has been given to him or her. So in the case of DJ, he recognized Miss Porter was a different type of teacher. She did not, as we say, wrap him up, but she took a different turn with him and gave him that, boost that he obviously needed, right? So the ethical element here is responsiveness. Good. Now there's an excerpt from Daring to Take Up Space. It's a book by Daniel Kopke, and it's a book of poems. And I just want to read this short poem, an excerpt from the poem. It says, "The truth is that you can be struggling and still be loved. You can be difficult and still be cared for. You can be less than perfect and still be deserving of compassion and kindness." And I know sometimes that may sound like a very tall order when you're in a classroom and the child is very disruptive or very aggressive. And so this is probably the furthest thing from your mind sometimes. You just want to get the work done. You want to be in peace and quiet. But we want to remember that even though students may be misbehaving, they're communicating something to us in that behavior. And so our response ought to be, reaching out and still caring for them and loving them, not shunning them or humiliating them. That's why I just added that there. Pastoral care continues, and we want to look at it in a more micro level now. It involves goal setting. So pastoral care is really hard work, actually, because you want to ensure that you set up your system that it can benefit all of the players, all of the stakeholders in that system. So when we're talking about goal setting, we want to think about the vision and the mission for your school. What is it that you want to see happen in your as a result of your pastoral care system being implemented? All right. How do you want, or what do you want your school population, your students, to represent in society? Some schools may focus on, and there's no right or wrong, as I said before, each person, each school, sorry, not person, each school has to contextualize their pastoral care. So some persons may want to focus on solely academics. Some persons may want to develop a well-rounded child, so they want their system to reflect good academics plus maybe involvement in extracurricular activities and so on. You have to set that pace to determine how your process would look. It involves planning, and it's really committed work here in order to see the concepts that you may have in mind or that you may have researched come to fruition. All right. But part of the planning, and I know sometimes I've been in the system for a bit, I know sometimes planning happens in isolation. You may have a few, or maybe just the principal, or just a few members of staff, maybe a senior management team doing the major work of planning for the school functioning. But in a pastoral care system, everybody has to be on board. It's a staff, it's a whole school effort, even including the auxiliary staff, as I said before, the groundsman, the tuck shop person. Everybody needs to be involved because everybody has to be on the same page about how this care should look. What would happen if you have a nice plan laid out, let's say the principal and just the senior staff members, but then you don't have buy-in from the other members of staff, or the talk shop person doesn't know that, they need to change their language and stop calling the boy hungry and stupid. And, all of those things make up your pastoral care system that you want to ensure that it runs smoothly and effectively because everybody knows what is expected of them or what is supposed to happen. It includes sourcing. When we say sourcing, we're talking about training and program development. So there may be things that you want to do in your system that you do not have this skill set to accomplish. That is no excuse for not having it done. Get the appropriate training, whether you yourself get the training or have the training be accessed by some other person in the team. All right. And program development, and again, specific to what you want to accomplish in your school. So don't just go online and pull on a program. There are lots of wonderful programs that are available, but it has to, again, find context, find identity in what you want to accomplish, and so you would find the best fit there. Maybe you might need equipment, or you might need to reach out in your community and ask for the facility. Maybe let's say of the resource center. All of this is part of how you're going to put your systems in place to ensure that all the needs that you are identifying are going to be met. Networking. This is, of course, an important and essential function as well. And this networking could be either with internal colleagues, so it could be members in your own staff, where, for example, you might have someone who maybe works as a Spanish teacher, but you didn't know this person has other technical skills. You want to utilize those persons. So you network and you find out what they're good at, what their giftings are, and use them. or it could be external colleagues, it could be other schools in your community, or other colleagues from different schools. It could even be persons who are outside of your community or outside of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I am sure if you've been in teaching long enough, you would have had some sort of training, workshop, something that would have caused some form of networking. Find out what's working for them. See if it is working, it can work in your context, and so you can implement some of those things. Individualized care. Now, it's not that this is not important, but we were saying before that this has moved from just the professionals, just the counselors being responsible for caring for the individual, to the whole school. But there are cases where you're going to need specialized assistance. You're going to need counseling skills, which maybe the average person may not have to that extent. And so you're going to need to reach out to these persons. All right. And sometimes you have the issue, I have here confidentiality convenience, simply because there are times when not just teachers, for example, the principal might want to share something, but it might not be something that he or she feels comfortable to share with the staff. So you might need, that person may need, the counselor to speak with, or some other person that they can reach out to within that community. Interagency collaboration, huge part of development of a pastoral care system. So for example, the social welfare or social services, as it's now called, these persons are always good to have. Like, I have them on my speed dial. I have somebody from the police, the social welfare, the prison. I have like a resource group of persons that I call on when I need assistance in the, depending on the area. And so interagency collaboration is so important, so helpful to have your system up and going. And of course, also you might have external experts. I am a clinical and counseling and community, psychologist, but I'm not a neuropsychologist. And so sometimes when I'm dealing with if I'm dealing with a client and there's something that tends along that way, I might have to reach out to one of my colleagues and say, you know what, this is what I'm seeing. Give me some guidance here, or, refer the person if it's a different matter, and so on. So this sort of collaboration is absolutely key. Now, the structural organization, it's important that when you're setting up, understand, or the principal or whoever is in charge, and it doesn't have to be the principal who has to be in charge, but whoever is taking the lead on it needs to inform other persons of where they are, where they fall on this in terms of this structure. And so an organizational chart is helpful to let people know maybe who they need to reach out to. So everybody may not go directly to the principal or to the counselor or to the whoever, but you know exactly who to reach out to when you have the varying needs. Okay? And of course, you want to ensure that the persons who are in these positions are persons who best fit these positions, not just your friend, not just, someone who you like to work with, but someone whose personality, someone whose skill, someone whose temperament fits what you want to accomplish. And so you would let them head up that part of your pastoral system. And risk taking, it's really important. This is not risk taking in the negative way, it's risk taking in the positive way. Okay, sometimes when you have when you're implementing a new system, you're going to have to take some calculated risks. But we're talking here about making calculated decisions on best solutions for the needs that you see, that you have assessed, that you have to work with. All right. Now, in doing some research, I looked at some responses of some teachers to the whole issue of pastoral care. This is research that was done in England. So let's hear what some teachers think of pastoral care. This person said, they say they're concerned for my mental well-being, but their concern isn't genuine. They use my mental health issues as an excuse, as a label. Schools don't do enough to support the well-being of their teachers. That isn't helping well-being at all. And the bigger context for this is that sometimes you have what if the system is not set up, what you would have is more or less crisis intervention. So if something happens today, you do a wellness something, or you do set up a fund to collect money to, and so it's always reactive more than proactive, which is what your pastoral care system ought to be. When you would have set your goals and made your plans, then you would know exactly what is needed, what is required for your context. And so those things will be in place. Everyone will know that they're available, and everyone would know who's responsible and how you go about accessing this care and so on. So it's not just enough to say that there is pastoral care available, but things have to be in place so that persons can really feel the care when they are down. All right, let's look at another one. It says you need to relax and float for a while rather than splashing around like mad to save yourself from drowning. Struggling comes in waves. In the midst of your own struggling, you might be splashing around in the water, and that will inevitably mean that others also get wet. When you are struggling, you might also cause others to struggle. And this again is in response to a system that was not properly set up. And
Okay, Miss Morris got kicked out. She's coming back in a while. Just be with us for yes, she's in
hi,
now.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry. I just realized I got, yeah, sorry about that. Let me. The response of a head teacher who says, if some people are drowning, they're not going to tell you. So why not have a shallow end where you can just stand and float and pretend. So many people hide it. By having a shallow end, the teachers who are struggling might be able to carry on swimming. Again, not the ideal system that you want to refer to. You want to have one where people don't have to pretend, but they know that this service is offered, the system is in place to get help, this help is accessible, and this help is available, and so that they would be able to navigate when they're feeling a struggle. And sometimes I know there are times when you may reach out to persons and they may not want to access that help. That's something that you really can't do much about. But once it is there, once you make it available, then you would have done your part. All right. The optimal response should be this. If a plant is failing to thrive, we see the problem residing with the soil and the environment, the light, the heat, the moisture, rather than with the plant needing to be pruned or discarded. And this, of course, simply talks to how we want to respond when there is a pastoral care need. We don't shun the individuals who need the help. We don't look at them as something is wrong with them, but we see it as an opportunity to assist them, to help them, to come alongside them and support them, rather than, bringing them down or humiliating them and making them feel that it's something is wrong with them for experiencing a struggle. So we don't kill the plant. We examine the soil, we examine the environment. Have I done anything in this environment to cause this? Why are my colleagues not feeling happy? Is it my behavior? Why are my children in the classroom not responding to me? Is it that, there's something that's going on with me that I need to be attentive to? And so we need to ensure that that is in place to minimize those things. So there are a few tips to help us provide better pastoral care. Some of them were mentioned earlier. Engage and involve the community. Very important. You cannot do it alone. Pastoral care systems, as it says, it's a system that involves several key players. And so everyone has to be involved in order for it to be effective, for it to be holistic, for it to be strategic and meet the needs of its intended. What can be done as well is to review staff's well-being. And this has to be in place, not just, I know we have professional development sessions and so on, that's in place, but there must also be a time when the management of the school gives staff an opportunity to, say what's happening with them. Is everything okay? Do you like the way things are going? What do you think we can improve on it? But it has to be a holistic effort. It has to be everybody doing their part in ensuring that that happens. Okay. Review student well-being outcomes. So you've created a program to help students in this way. Is it doing what it was intended to do? Or is it just a program you have for the sake of programming? Use data to assess the quality of the current practices. So one of the important things is always to get evidence to ensure that what you're doing is something that is going to be meaningful. Not just something off the top of your head, not just something that feels good, but something that really meets the needs and cares for the persons it's intended to care for. All right, so there's the different assessment modules and programs and so on that could be used to assess what you're doing as a teacher, could be used to assess what management is doing, how they're doing, if they're doing it well, and all of that in terms of ensuring that quality pastoral care is being given. You can map policies and practices against outcomes. So what are some of the policies you have at your particular school? Are these things really working in favor of those who it's intended to work for? I know, for example, let me just throw this in there. I know, for example, at one time there was let me not say it was a policy, but I know a lot of schools used to let children pay like $1 or so when they came late. I don't know if persons here would remember that. And, you know, in having discussions, we're like, what if they were really struggling? And probably the obvious option would have been for them to stay at home, but they made an effort to come to school. Granted, they came late, and in some cases, you know, they have to take care of younger siblings and so on. Why punish them for even making the effort to show up? You know, so it sounded good at the start, you know, punish them so that they won't want to pay the $1 and they'll come early. But there are cases where, you know, that really wasn't helpful. So even as you implement different things in your pastoral care system, check it to make sure it works. Evaluate and reevaluate. And there's nothing wrong if you have been doing something prior and it's not working for maybe the batch of students you have now. It's okay to make those changes. All right. Enable staff to reflect on their own pastoral care practices. So it's quite important for teachers to stop and reflect so that they don't suffer from burnout, so that if they feel or they start feeling unmotivated, that could be caught before it gets too bad. So have opportunities where this can happen and where they can be honest with themselves and say, you know what, I'm not really doing well here, or I need some support here. Have that in place at in a regular way that could provide some support. Decide what needs to be stopped, started, or kept. Just as mentioning that, there are things that you might have been doing before that's not working anymore. That's okay to change. It doesn't mean that your school has failed or your programs are not good. Maybe it's not working for the current batch of students that you have. Maybe the current batch of students need something else, and so you need to come up with something new for the current batch, and so you have to start something at this point. Or maybe there's something that's been happening for years and it's working and it continues to have the optimal effect that you want it to have. The outcomes and the results are positive and you want to keep that in place. That's okay as well. You want to clearly define the roles and the responsibilities of every person who is involved in this care system. So it's not just the principal or not just the top management, but every person from the security guard who might be the first person the student encounters to, you know, the groundsman. Everyone needs to know what their roles and responsibilities are in supplying this care for the system that they're a part of. And of course, this has to be communicated regularly, and any sort of progress that is made needs to be communicated regularly and positively. So you want to ensure that persons, if things aren't going the way that you want, in terms of the outcomes, you're not getting what you want, that is communicated in a positive way. You don't want to, of course, make anybody feel that their efforts are not welcomed, or that they're not doing enough. But maybe, as I like to say, be inquisitive. Instead of saying you're not doing, maybe I wonder what is happening, why this is the result. So you can have an opportunity to investigate rather than lay blame. And the final one is provide sufficient capacity and resources. Now, this is a big part of the job, but it's an important part of the job. And here, again, everybody is required to be on board with this. And I know just from being in the system, a lot of times the resources come from your own pockets, and we would prefer it not to be so. But that's what it is sometimes. So don't shy away from that. But as I said previously, you can look for funding. You can look for training options and all those sorts of things. There are funding agencies that are willing to help and work with maybe it might be a vulnerable group or underprivileged kids, or support an outstanding program. Whatever, you can access these sorts of things, but that's your job to provide, make sure resources are provided and that the capacity is built up for your staff members. Okay, so that's it for me. Thank you very much for listening. Sorry for all the internet disruptions, but if there are any questions, I hope they're not hard questions. I'll take them now.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miss Morris. Any questions, participants? Anyone would like to share their views on what Miss Morris would have just said? Okay, Miss Edmira's hand is raised. Miss Edmira, you have the floor.
I do not have a question, but I just want to say that this was an excellent presentation. I really, it was really informative. I enjoyed every minute of it, and the slides and everything was so clear. Thank you very much for this information. And if used by schools, I am sure that we will see lots of improvement. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Admira. We have Ms. Shania Webb. Her hand is raised. Ms. Shania Webb, you can now unmute and ask your questions.
Good night, everybody. I do share the same sentiments as Miss Walker. Definitely love the presentation, Miss Morris. It was Mrs. Morris. I definitely would say the same thing, where as regards to schools, if we really take a look at everything that was said, it's so truthful, because all behavior is purposeful. And once we keep that in our minds and note all the things and all the tips that we got here, I definitely can see a positive outlook in the future. So thank you again for this wonderful PowerPoint that you put together. Thanks again.
Thank you, Miss Webb, my past student.
Shanaika Solane is also saying thank you, Miss Morris. Do we have anyone with any questions, any concerns, any queries?
Yes.
Any other?
Yes, I'm here, Miss. You're not paying attention to me?
Mr.
Yes,
John. Okay, great. Yes,
now,
Mr. John.
in light of the release of the CPA exams, right? I noticed that today was the release date. I'm wondering what can be done, in terms of pastoral care for the children who are put under the amount of pressure that they are put under. I know the results are released. I know some children didn't do well. You know, what will we recommend it? What would our presenter recommend for situations such as these?
So thanks, that's a really good question. Again, highlighting the point that it's it has to be a total buy-in for everybody. So the school has a part to play in that, parents have a part to play in that, and we have to, even in terms of the community, we have to get people to understand that children function at different levels. It does not speak to their worth. Yes, we would, of course, like everybody to do well, but if they don't do well, again, let's stop and ask what went wrong. So not blaming the child for what's happening, but where did they fall short? What could we do differently? What happened? Sometimes a child might be, you know, a good student, but on the day of the exam, they just blank out. We have to keep encouraging them and try walking them through the process and let them know that even if they fail, it doesn't make them a failure. It's just, this is an event. This is not who they are. And just encourage them to try again, keep their head up, you know, keep pressing on. But I appreciate that it can be very, you know, daunting for some, but we have to keep encouraging them and help them to keep focused. Hope that helps.
Okay. Do we have any other participants who wish to share their views?
Anything that you agreed with, you disagreed with, something that caused you to think, something that you're totally opposed to, I am open.
Okay, so I have a question then, Ms. Mount. You know, sometimes I heard you talk about buying and about engaging the community, but there are some persons on staff who I should say they're always like in a position. You can't get them to be involved in anything. How do you really deal with such persons?
So sometimes that happens. Sometimes you don't have buy-in from everyone. Sometimes that comes as a result of how the proposition was posed to them. If it was just this is what you do, as opposed to having had them in the planning stages and in the development stages, you might have that. But sometimes it takes a little one-on-one, just finding out what's happening, how they can help, just reminding them that they're part of the team and you want them a part of the team, and finding out, what's happening, why they may not be contributing. And I'll give you a little story. I in a few years ago, I was actually at a school with a past teacher who I totally admired. And when the teacher got to the school where I was, the teacher was not functioning. And I felt so sort of disappointed, like, that's not the teacher I know, she's not engaged. She just bare minimum. And I'm like, that is not the person I know. And I went and had a conversation. I said, I realize you're not as engaged as I remember that you used to be. And, is there anything I can do to help, and so on. And she explained why she was disengaged. And it was as a result of feeling being badly treated let's put it that way. And so she needed to just have a moment to regain herself before she got back in, you know, in her groove, I should say. And she was near the end of her time, just about time to retire. So it was very painful for her, you know, and so sometimes we can sit back and just judge a person without getting to know the story. So my advice would be to get to know the story, get to know and to hear and to understand and find ways of supporting. So while she wasn't as vibrant as she usually was, there were little things, you know, that I kind of got her to just weigh in on and just keep her a little active, you know, in the process, because I reminded her that this was important, not just for her, but for me, because this is part of what, you know, encouraged me and inspired me when I was a student under her. So sometimes people just need that little, you know, support there, but understanding the story helps.
Thank you so much. And you seem to be one of the persons who have the kind of attitude, you know, that one would look for in a teacher in a classroom. Now, sometimes it's hard to get people to, you know, change their attitude if they were like one way all along. But as you said, if you work with them, get to know them, take time to talk with them, this can help a lot. A lot of what you said really resonated with me, and I like the fact that you goal setting. I find in a lot of schools, people are just taking things one day at a time as it comes, you know, deal with situation as they come and so forth. But if you have goals, you talk about committed work effort in order to implement concepts and this whole inclusive, the principal or whoever in charge just come and dish out stuff, but these things that we will talk about as a staff. And it's easier that way to get buy-in when you talk to people, involve them in the process. So I really, really liked your presentation, and thank you very much. That's all for me. Mr. Reed, I think she probably was knocked out again.
I am back. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you. I
Oh,
was just
good.
finished up by saying thank you very much.
You're welcome. I'm so sorry about all of this. Oh dear.
Hello.
Hey.
We have a Miss Williams who wished to
Yes,
speak.
Yes.
But we are not hearing you loud enough, Mr. Williams.
Okay, let
Oh.
me, is it better now?
Yes, please.
Yes. I am wondering, now there are times when we learn that a child might be going through some abusive situation and so forth. And we want to help. And there are people that we might have to report to get help for the child. How do we draw the line between helping the child and at the same time being confidential? So how do we draw that line? We want to help the child, but at the same time, the child needs some level of confidentiality in whatever he or she is going through. How do we draw that line?
So the example you gave of abuse, when it comes to the issue of abuse, there's no holding to confidentiality in that. And as a counselor, that's one of the first things that you would inform the client or the student when they come to you. You will let them know that everything can be held in confidence, except in cases where you plan to harm yourself or harm somebody else, or where of course, you're being harmed. And so those things need to be reported. So even before the student starts giving you information, you set that parameter clear. Yes, it can be difficult and of course very frightening for a child to want that information retold to whether the teacher or the police, but in the process of helping in the process of supporting the child, you help the child to retell that story to a safe and trusted person who can actually do something about it. All right, so that is not something that you can promise a child to keep in confidence, not an issue of abuse. If it's some other issue that is not as detrimental, you can have that conversation with the child without having to break confidence. But in the case of abuse, there's no confidentiality keeping in that regard.
Thank you very kindly.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we have anyone else who wish to share their concerns or ask any questions? Remember, we said that this ought to be an interactive session, this last part, and this last section. And I'm certain that there are some of you who have little situations that are playing in your mind, and you would like certain things to be clarified. Ms. Morris is here. Go ahead and share your views.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. John.
Yeah.
Mr. John, yes.
One thing I am the rain is pouring so heavily out here that I really not hearing so well, but there is a concern I have, and I think Miss Morris might be able to help me out here. Because we are seeing this situation with boys in our school, and I noticed even the video that she shared with the feet of the young man, right? And we keep losing the boys over a period of time. We have been losing them in performance and so on, and participation in things and so on. I don't know what she might have come up with, because I can ask her what can be done. I know it has been going on for some time. So I'm asking her what she might have, already established as a policy to deal with this kind of situation. You heard
Yeah.
anything? You heard me?
Yeah. Yes, I got you.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the big things that works in any given situation is creating trusted relationships. Children need to be able to rely on persons who are safe, who make them feel safe, persons who are willing to listen to them, persons who will not judge them, and persons who will support them. Now you need to start there. And I have found, even in my experience, once you start there, then you're able to influence them and encourage them and inspire them to do the things that you know that is helpful for them to do. Sometimes you also need to widen that beyond the scope of just the child. Sometimes you have to have conversations with the parents or guardians and find out what's happening in that relationship, what's causing this child to feel, to not excel the way sometimes, as teachers, we say we see their potential, but it's just not happening. And I've had situations where, especially in the rural schools that I worked at, children who were the breadwinners. So I know in my early days in the rural areas, there was a child who was missing in the time when there was banana days, they would have the packing of the truck and so on. And I realized a pattern. This child was always missing. And I realized the pattern is on banana days, he's missing. And myself and the principal went to look for him to find out what was happening. And he had to work in order to come to school. So while we in school were looking at it as the child is missing, when we actually went out to look for him, we realized that this was his effort to come to school by working on the banana truck and getting a little something to be able to come in school for the 2 days. And when you have more information, you can do more. So of course we try to put things in place where he was better supported so that he didn't have to do that. We had to have a conversation with the parents who, in that particular time, they were not very supportive or literate, so all they were concerned about is that he needs to help the family. But we try to, work with them, and sometimes it's a longer process than you would like it to be, but you have to keep, encouraging and helping them to see the benefits of the child being at school and so on. I had another situation where a child was missing, and when we went in the community looking for him, we were told he's at a particular location. And when we went, it was an old abandoned house that they said he would normally sleep under. No, he wasn't there when we went, but when we saw the conditions, we got to understand, no, this is something that we need to address. And a lot of times we see children coming into school, they're coming with so much, baggage, so much stress, so much undue pressure from the home front. And so we have to make that relationship available to them where they can talk with us, where they can confide in us, and so we can know how best to support them and meet them where they are. But once you have that relationship with them, trust me, you can get them to do anything. And I'm saying that in not loosely, but meaning you can get them to stay focused and value education for what it is. But relationship is the bottom line. And you saw that played out in the video as well. Relationship works every
Yes,
time.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I must also say that you have done such a wonderful job,
Thank
with this
you.
presentation. I really do appreciate it. It would have done a lot in improving the relationships in school and the way we deal with our children. So thank you once again.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Ms. Yokin said, thank you, Ms. Morris, great presentation. Okay. And yes. And Ms. Unika Hunt also indicated that.
Thank you.
We have any more participants interested in sharing their views or asking any questions? If not, Ms. Morris, your presentation has definitely been a mouthful to us. And I'm certain that we would have learned a lot from it tonight. The pastoral care must be inclusive, holistic, strategic, and must involve the community. And I am sure that once we do that, that will possibly change the culture of our school, one student at a time, right? I want to really thank you for such an informative session, and sure that in upcoming term that this information will give us the benefit of going forward with our students, learning more how to deal with them, and I'm certain that we all are positive that things will work out this first once with all this information that you have given to us. All right. So this has brought us to the end of our session, and we truly do thank you. Have a blessed evening.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure. Anytime, anything that you need help with, I'll be obliged.
Thank you. And we have Shania Webb. Hand has now raised. Miss Webb?
No, it's not raised, it's just claps.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes, well, all the best. Want to thank all of you for logging in. And remember that we're on YouTube also. Our next session. Our next session will be on, and we hope that everyone can sign up for session 4. Session 4 would be mental health and the teacher, stress management and self-care. And this will take place on September the 16th. So we will send out the link, we'll send out the invitation, the link, and we encourage others to join us. Thank you for joining us today. Have a blessed evening all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.